Close your eyes for a moment. Picture a castle, torchlight, thick stone walls. Now picture a bed, stuffed with straw, shared by 3 generations of the same family, and possibly a goat. This is the real medieval bedroom. No silk sheets, no privacy, and a church that had very strong opinions about what happened after dark. But here's what the history books don't tell you. Medieval people weren't saints, they weren't monsters, they were complicated. What was sex really like in the Middle Ages? Did the church really ban it for most of the year? And did anyone actually follow those rules? Tonight, we're pulling back the bed curtain, slowly, gently, and with all the strange human truth intact. Before we begin, if you enjoy history that's calm, curious, and a little bit secret, please like this video and subscribe to Little Historical. You belong here. Now, let's rewind to a time before privacy was invented. Think you know what medieval intimacy looked like? Knights and ladies? Candlelight and poetry? Forget it. Real medieval couples shared their beds with children, in-laws, and sometimes the chickens. Privacy was a dream. The church had a rule book longer than a monastery's prayer list, and yet people still found a way. Here's the question most videos won't ask. Were medieval people miserable? Or were they just like us, figuring it out in the dark? What was sex really like in the Middle Ages? Did the church truly control every bedroom? And what did peasants know that nobles didn't? Before we go back in time, do me a small favor. Like this video, subscribe to Little Historical. It helps more curious people find these quiet, true stories. Now, let's step into a world without privacy, but full of passion. Here's something they never taught you in school. Medieval Europe had a love-hate relationship with the bedroom. The church said, only for babies, only one position, only on certain days. The people said, we'll see about that. What was sex really like in the Middle Ages? Was it all guilt, shame, and itchy wool blankets? Or did medieval men and women find joy, despite the rules? Tonight, we're not telling you the Hollywood version, we're telling you the truth, from penitentials, court records, and love letters written 800 years ago. If you're someone who wants history that's honest, calm, and a little bit rebellious, please like and subscribe to Little Historical. You've found your corner of YouTube. Now, pull up a chair by the fire, metaphorically, and let's talk about what really happened after dark. Close your eyes for a moment. Picture a castle, torchlight, thick stone walls. Now picture a bed, stuffed with straw, shared by 3 generations of the same family, and possibly a goat. This is the real medieval bedroom, not a whispered secret behind velvet curtains. Not a knight sneaking away with a lady's favor. Just a single, smoky room where children snored, old aunts muttered in their sleep, and the chickens roosted at the foot of the mattress. So where did intimacy fit into this? How did 2 people find a private moment when the entire household, including the livestock, was watching? The answer is stranger than you might think. Medieval couples didn't have privacy. They had timing, they had silence, and they had the desperate human need to steal a few quiet minutes before dawn or after the fire died down when everyone else was finally asleep. But even then, the walls were thin, the gossip traveled fast, and the church had an opinion about everything. Especially this. What you're about to hear isn't a lecture. It's a window into a world where love, duty, and desire collided in the dark. And what we find there might just surprise you. Before we pull back that curtain, if you enjoy history that's calm, curious, and a little bit secret, Please like this video and subscribe to Little Historical. You belong here. Now, let's talk about the rules. Because in medieval Europe, the bedroom wasn't just a room, it was a battlefield between human nature and divine law. And the church kept score. Not with a wink or a whisper, but with leather-bound penitentials, sin manuals written by priests who seemed to have an uncomfortable amount of interest in what married couples did after dark. According to these guides, intimacy had one purpose, and one purpose only: making more Christians. Pleasure, suspicious, passion, sinful, enthusiasm. You might need to confess that too. Certain days of the week were off limits. Sundays, obviously. Fridays, because Christ suffered. Wednesdays, for reasons that no one can quite remember, but everyone was too afraid to question. Add in Lent, Advent, feast days, fast days, and the eve of practically any saint who ever lived. And you might wonder, was there ever a good night to be close to your spouse? Some modern storytellers will tell you that medieval couples were left with only 40 or 50 days a year. But here's the secret the textbooks won't say out loud. Those rules were suggestions. Idealistic wishes written by celibate men who had never shared a straw mattress on a cold winter night. Because when the frost crept through the walls and the only warmth came from another body, do you really think anyone checked the calendar? They didn't. They couldn't afford to. The church thundered from the pulpit. Confessors asked pointed, embarrassing questions. But behind closed doors, or behind a thin curtain, or behind the barn before sunrise, people made their own choices. They nodded at the priest on Sunday, and on Monday night, they did exactly what they had been planning to do anyway. Quietly, carefully, with one ear listening for footsteps. So what happened when the rules broke? When desire won? That's where the real story begins. Because the medieval bedroom wasn't ruled by holiness, it was ruled by hunger. And the church courts have the receipts. Something softer was waiting to be found. Because despite the rules, despite the fines, despite the priests and the penitentials and the prying eyes of an entire village, medieval people fell in love. Not the polished love of courtly poetry, where knights pined from a distance and ladies remained untouchable. Real love. Messy, inconvenient, human love. The kind that bloomed in the spaces between chores, between prayers, between the endless demands of survival. Letters survive, hidden for centuries in monastery archives, or pressed between the pages of forgotten books. A husband writing to his wife during a crusade, not about glory or God, but about how he missed the way she laughed. A widow refusing a second marriage, not because of money, but because she had already given her heart to someone who was gone. A peasant couple, whose names no historian bothered to record, buried side by side, with their fingers intertwined, even after the flesh had faded from their bones. These were not exceptions. They were the quiet majority. The church raged against passion, but passion refused to listen. Couples held hands in the marketplace. They exchanged knowing glances during Mass. They found ways to be alone, by the river, in the hayloft, behind the church on a moonless night, not because they were sinning, but because they were simply human. And yes, some marriages were arranged. Some were miserable. Some women wept on their wedding night, but some women laughed. Some husbands were kind. Some couples grew old together, their love deepening like wine stored too long in the cellar, forgotten but still potent. So what was sex really like in the Middle Ages? It was controlled, it was punished, it was whispered about in confessionals and written down in court records. But it was also tender. It was also desperate. It was also the only warmth to